My name is Kathryn. I am a senior in Grace Hopper College, double majoring in history and ethnicity, race, and migration. And I really came to be fascinated by the Black Panthers because of the course of my academic trajectory and all that it's involved. I decided pretty early on in my Yale career that I was really interested in studying civil rights history, and particularly the history of the Black freedom struggle and the Black Panthers. And so that's really how I got excited about thinking about the Black Panthers, which is what led me to my exhibit, and is really all about the Black Panthers, the May Day rally that took place in New Haven in 1970, and thinking about the roles of various groups and organizations and institutions like Yale in both facilitating and hindering some of the protest activity that took place on May 1st in 1970. So I really was interested in thinking about how the Black freedom struggle and the Black Panthers in particular came to coalesce in New Haven. I did not really know very much prior to engaging in this exhibit project about the May Day rally in particular. And so as I was trying to think about a way to kind of synthesize some of the main themes that have come out of my educational and academic pursuits at Yale, thinking about also too the space that I'm in and the institution that I attend, May Day just felt like a really good opportunity to kind of link all of those things together and to allow me to get into the archives and curate an exhibit around these themes. I had the privilege and just total fortune of working with two wonderful and incredible advisors throughout the course of my project. One of them is my faculty advisor, who's also the advisor for my history senior essay, and that is Professor Crystal Feimster. I knew really early on at Yale that I wanted to study civil rights history because I took Professor Feimster's long civil rights movement class during my first year fall. And it just really opened me up to so much of what I hadn't understood about the civil rights movement, all of the kind of activism that led up to the traditional civil rights period, and all that came after it too. And so when I was thinking about my senior essay, I knew I wanted to focus on kind of the late stage civil rights and Black Power eras. And so Professor Feimster was just a perfect person to work with for that project. And as a result, was a wonderful and just incredible resource as I went about curating my exhibit. Along with Professor Feimster, I also had a librarian advisor, and that librarian advisor was James Casanides. And he was just such an incredible resource and such a wonderful person to work with. Even before I knew that I was going to be curating the exhibit, when I was still in the proposal stage, I met with James and he just immediately pulled up all sorts of archival documents and materials and sources that Yale had in its holdings, which really allowed me to not only strengthen, of course, my proposal, as I was able to cite really specific documents or even just folders and boxes that I was interested in working with and finding archival materials within. But also he was just throughout the process so supportive, always pushing me to kind of think in new directions and consider new ideas or new other pieces of information or archival documents in and of themselves. So I was so grateful for that too. And just lastly too, while he wasn't my official or formal advisor during the process, Bill Landis in Manuscripts and Archives was so helpful, particularly because my exhibit came mostly out of manuscripts and archives. And he was just so informative. He happened to already have a lot of May Day related boxes out in manuscripts and archives when I was just initially beginning my search. And so he was so kind to leave those and answer any questions that I had and really allow me to kind of learn more about May Day from somebody who had done a lot of work to study the protest as well. And so definitely, I think too, because of the pandemic, it goes without saying that some of my experience in curating the exhibit was very different from the get-go. I was thinking very strategically about, how was I even going to get into the archives? Was I going to even be allowed back on campus in the fall, which thankfully I was. And I was able to get into the archives and have that sort of traditional experience of combing through boxes to find materials that best suited my exhibit. And so I think certainly a spirit of flexibility was something that was encouraged in me throughout the process, and certainly helped by the fact that I had the wonderful library exhibits team who really did so much to help make the process so easy when I was navigating trying to acquire materials or trying to figure out how to get them scanned or trying to figure out exactly which parts of materials I wanted to use, because I found lots of, for instance, newspaper articles or newspapers generally, and then had to pick a clipping within them that would really work for my exhibit. But I think that that spirit of flexibility worked really well. And even though it was certainly not a traditional year of curating an exhibit out of Sterling, I was absolutely able to continue the process and feel really like I got a wonderful and rewarding experience out of it. There are several things that I hope a visitor will take away from my exhibit. I think, for one, I'm really hoping that visitors will have a better understanding or a more thorough understanding of what the Black Panthers constituted as an organization and who individual leaders and members of the Black Panthers were. I think that prior to coming to Yale, I hadn't had much exposure to the Black Panthers, had sort of thought more traditionally about a traditional civil rights timeline that didn't include their activism within the larger course of the Black freedom struggle. And something that I've been very fortunate to gain access to over the course of my years here at Yale, and especially this was benefited during the exhibit process, was thinking more broadly about the Black freedom struggle and its trajectory and how the Black Panthers really factored into it. So I hope that people coming out of my exhibit have a broader understanding of that. I hope too that people can think, importantly about the roles of various institutions in both supporting and continuing the efforts that took place at May Day, how people, coalesced around activist organizations to encourage them to allow their voices to be heard, how, areas like residential colleges as units really took up the mission of trying to support protesters, whether that was through establishing daycare centers or clinics or providing them with meals, all of those things so that protesters were able to really engage in this activist effort. And then the third thing that I hope people are able to take away too is just how important it is to think about these events in history as having very long timelines and certainly continuities in the future and in the present as well. And I think that, certainly in this moment of reckoning with racial justice that we've had over the course of the past year, I just couldn't help but keep seeing connections to May Day in 1970 and May and 2020. So I think that it's certainly important to not only continue to think about these moments as moments in history, but also think very critically and importantly about the roles that they have and serve in the present and in the future.